I felt a gentle stirring in my chest the moment I opened the ancient, leather-bound volume. It wasn't the weight of the book itself, but something far subtler, an invisible resonance that hummed in harmony with my deepest longings. The cover bore no title, only an intricate symbol etched in gold leaf, a circle enclosing a single seedling. I sat at the edge of an old wooden table, morning light filtering through a dusty window, and instinctively knew this was no ordinary text. This was the key the universe had dispatched to unlock a chamber within my soul. For years, I had chased fragments of a deeper truth-attending workshops on mindfulness, devouring spiritual treatises, and wandering through remote temples in search of enlightenment. Yet nothing prepared me for the simplicity of this moment. The arrival of a book, as if carried on the breath of cosmic intention. It lay before me like a gift, wrapped not in paper but in the promise of revelation. My heart quickened at the realization that every experience, up to now every triumph, every heartbreak had been orchestrated to bring me to this precise junction. I traced my fingertip across the embossed seedling, feeling a sudden warmth surge through my palm. The air around me seemed to shimmer, and fleeting images danced at the edge of my vision. Stars collapsing into seeds, seeds blossoming into galaxies, and within each swirl of cosmic dust, a reflection of my own likeness. In that instant, I understood that the universe speaks in symbols, and the symbols always choose the moment when we are ready to listen. My mind raced back to a moment long ago, when a young Mahatma Gandhi first encountered the Bhagavad Gita. As a law student in London, he stumbled upon the sacred text in a dusty bookstore, unaware that its verses would seed the principle of nonviolence that later transformed nations. He was unprepared at that time for the depth awaiting him, but the book found him anyway, and his readiness ripened in the years that followed. I recognized the parallel. Consciousness reaches a threshold, and at that threshold, the cosmic courier arrives. I cracked the spine, and the pages exhaled a scent of must and mystery. The first line spoke not of doctrine, but of a quiet invitation. When your spirit stands at the threshold of awakening, the universe will send what you need. There was no elaborate preamble, only a direct whisper to the heart. I realized the genius of the book lay in its restraint. It did not overwhelm with jargon or flood with dogma. Instead, it mirrored the hushed cadence of my own inner voice, affirming that the answers had dwelt within me all along. As I read, my surroundings blurred. The rough-hewn beams of the ceiling, the chipped paint on the window frame, even the familiar scent of brewing tea vanished, replaced by a vast expanse of possibilities. In that liminal space, I felt the seed of my own potential stir, awakening from a long slumber. The universe had not thrust this book upon me recklessly. It had waited with exquisite patience until my soul could receive its message without fear. Closing the book, I sensed a shift, a recalibration of my very being. The ordinary world regained its contours, yet I felt endowed with a new lens of perception. Every leaf fluttering outside the window seemed imbued with intent, and every passing breeze carried the echo of a whispered counsel. The book had become less an object and more a living presence, a companion guiding me toward deeper truths waiting beyond its pages. I stood, cradling the volume against my heart, and stepped into the corridor. The floorboards creaked like a welcome sign, and I realized that my journey had truly begun at this moment. No longer was I a seeker wandering in the dark. I was now the vessel of a cosmic narrative, entrusted with the unfolding of a story far greater than myself. This emergence of the cosmic key was both an ending and a beginning and end to restless searching, and a beginning of deliberate awakening. The resonance I felt would pulse through every subsequent passage, weaving a continuous thread from the seedling on the cover to the culmination awaiting me in the final pages. As I venture forward, I carry with me the knowledge that timing is woven into the fabric of existence. The universe sends its rarest gifts, not when we demand them, but when we have matured enough to wield them with wisdom and compassion. Main point recap: the universe delivers its guiding key exactly when our soul has ripened to receive it, marking the end of fruitless searching and the true commencement of our awakening journey. Transition hint: next, we will explore how that readiness unfolds within us, revealing the signs and shifts that signal our soul's preparation for transformation. I woke before dawn, the sky still inked in deep navy as I sat cross-legged on the floor beside my bed. The rare book lay open at my side, its pages fluttering softly in the cool morning air. Yet I found my eyes drifting inward, scanning the subtle stirrings within. A gentle hum vibrated through my chest, a sensation I had mistaken for anxiety in years past, but now recognized as something altogether different: readiness. My inner landscape, once barren and uncertain, was beginning to bloom with clues that I had steadied my footing on the threshold of awakening. The first sign emerged in my dreams. Previously, my nighttime visions had looped repetitively mundane errands, old conversations, unresolved anxieties. But in recent nights, patterns had shifted. I found myself navigating luminous halls, guided by ephemeral figures who spoke without words, beckoning me forward. These dreams felt less like the subconscious playing out fears and more like whispered invitations to step deeper into my true self. In one dream, I walked through a field of golden reeds that whispered songs, and each reed unfurled into its own miniature galaxy, reminding me that even the smallest seed can contain the entire cosmos. I awoke with my heart pounding, aware that my psyche was orchestrating symbolic messages rather than idle fantasies. Throughout the day, I noticed a new attunement to moments of synchronicity: a chance encounter on the street, a stranger's offhand remark about a seed germinating in darkness mirrored a line I'd just read, a windfall book recommendation from a friend only hours before the page on allowing and receiving appeared. Even the morning coffee smell held a hint of something more, a reminder that every simple pleasure could be a portal to wonder if only I paid attention. These uncanny alignments no longer felt eerie. They felt like compass points guiding me toward my inner readiness. I remembered the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who sat beneath the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. Legend tells that he weathered trials of fear and temptation before dawn broke, and his soul unfurled into the clarity of enlightenment. For years, he had prepared through meditation, discipline, and detachment. Yet scholars emphasize that it was the moment his heart had matured, when hesitation fell away, that true awakening ignited. In that way, his journey parallels my own. The inner terrain must shift from resistance to receptivity before the light of understanding can fully penetrate. As the book advised, I began a simple exercise. Each evening, I recorded 3 subtle signs of readiness I had encountered: an unexpected insight, a harmonious dream, or a synchronicity in daily life. At first, entries were scarce and forced. I strained to find evidence, but over the course of a week, the list grew organically. I noted how my breath seemed deeper when I sat in silence, how pressure points in my body responded instantly when I acknowledged them, how moments of stillness offered clarity faster than any journal entry could capture. These small victories, quietly accumulated, built momentum. I felt the scaffolding of my soul rise plank by plank toward a vantage point of greater perception. One afternoon, while walking through a bustling market, I paused at a stall selling hand-carved wooden seeds, the same symbol embossed on the book's cover. My heart skipped. I had never noticed such items before, yet here they were, lined neatly like sentinels awaiting my gaze. I cradled one in my palm, rough grain pressing into my skin, and felt a jolt of kinship. It was as though the universe had arranged this marketplace encounter to affirm that my awareness was expanding beyond the page and into the world around me. In that moment, the boundary between self and environment blurred. My inner readiness had altered how I perceived everything external. That night, I returned to the book's pages and found a passage describing precisely this shift. Readiness is not merely a state of mind, but a reverberation in body and sula harmonization that aligns your frequency with the murmurs of the cosmos. The words struck me not as abstract theory, but as a literal description of my lived experience. I closed the book and lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, feeling every inch of my being resonate with those words. The room felt consecrated. My heart felt consecrated. In the days that followed, I encountered a larger example beyond my personal sphere. I read about Marie Curie, who discovered radium after years of meticulous research and countless failures. Colleagues noted that she sensed the final breakthrough before she tested her compounds. The crystal lattice patterns first whispered their secrets in her notebooks, and only then did she isolate the element. Her scientific intuition, honed by diligence and trial, mirrored the spiritual intuition I was cultivating. Readiness would reveal itself as a knowing that preceded visible proof. Curie's readiness was her subtle assurance that nature would comply if she merely learned to listen. Inspired, I devised an inner checklist of readiness markers: heightened dream clarity, spontaneous tears of release, physical sensations syncing with emotional shifts, and serendipitous confirmations in the outer world. Unlike a rigid protocol, this checklist served as a mirror of my evolving sensitivity. Whenever I checked off a marker, I paused to sit in gratitude, letting the energy of acknowledgement root itself in my body. Through this practice, I noticed something remarkable. I no longer chased signs. Signs chased me. They emerged unbidden, an eagle soaring overhead at noon, a line of poetry on a stranger's t-shirt, the scent of jasmine drifting by a closed door. Each instance felt like an answer to a question I had not yet asked. The subtle transformation in my inner landscape also manifested in the way I interacted with others. Old patterns of defensiveness dissolved. In conversations, I found myself listening more deeply, tuning to the silences between words. When a friend expressed frustration, I empathized without absorbing their tension. When a disagreement erupted, I recognized the tension as an opportunity to practice compassion rather than retreat. My soul was not merely opening pages of a book. It was translating the learnings into new neural pathways of behavior. This shift reminded me of how Martin Luther King Jr. Jing's readiness for nonviolent action emerged not overnight, but through countless moments of conscious choice, choosing love over anger, steadfastness over fear. King's readiness crescendoed into the march from Selma, but the prelude was threaded through small decisions to respond with peace in the face of aggression. One evening, I sat by my window and watched fireflies flicker in the garden. Their glow felt like Morse code, a wordless telegraph from the universe, confirming that my transformation was no solitary endeavor. The readiness I cultivated was mirrored in these tiny beacons of light, each one shining from its own inner flame. I could feel the final barrier dissolving, the barrier between knowing and being. With this, I closed the second bookmark, the moment of recognizing readiness, and felt a quiet anticipation for the next movement. My soul's compass no longer spun in confusion. It pointed steadily toward the work that lay ahead. The book's chapters would continue to unfold, but I understood now that the true chapter of readiness was not confined to words on a page. It was the living story of my own unfolding. Main point recap. Recognizing spiritual readiness emerges through subtle shifts in dreams, emotions, perceptions, and intuition, marking the transformation of our inner landscape. Transition hint. Next, we will delve into how the law of attraction weaves these seeds of readiness into the fabric of reality. I felt the room vibrate as I turned the page and encountered the words, "Your thoughts are the architects of your reality." It was as though the book itself had leaned in to whisper this truth directly into my ear. I closed my eyes and exhaled, allowing the phrase to settle deep within my chest. The law of attraction was no longer an abstract concept I had read about in self-help manuals. It was alive inside me, weaving its threads through every intention I set and every doubt I released. That afternoon, I conducted a simple experiment. I sat cross-legged on the floor, placed my palms gently over an unopened journal, and visualized a single word: abundance. In my mind's eye, I watched golden light coil around the letters, as if they were seeds planted in fertile soil. I then wrote the word in calligraphic strokes and set an intention. I will notice abundance in small moments today. No grand declarations, no need to outline the details, just a seed of clarity. Moments later, I received an unexpected gift. The barista at my favorite cafe handed me a free pastry because the previous customer had overpaid. I felt a rush of warmth, not merely at the token itself, but at the orchestration behind it. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with a notification. A long-lost friend had sent a message expressing gratitude for a kind word I'd shared months ago. I realized these moments of grace were ripples from the intention I had sown. The law of attraction was not a cosmic lottery machine, but a mirror reflecting my own vibrational frequency back into the world. I remembered the story of Florence Nightingale, who in the mid-1800s revolutionized nursing through unwavering belief in her mission. She envisioned clean wards, compassionate care, and the rapid recovery of countless patients. Despite skepticism and resistance, her focused intention manifested in the formation of the Nightingale Fund and the transformation of medical practices across continents. Her thoughts, unwavering and precise, attracted the resources and collaborations necessary to bring her vision into reality. In reflecting on her journey, I understood that the law of attraction requires not just belief, but persistent alignment. Each thought must echo the future you wish to inhabit. Determined to deepen my practice, I crafted a morning ritual. Before sunrise, I would sit in meditation, breathe deeply, and speak aloud 3 affirmations. I trust my soul's guidance, I align with universal abundance, and I embody creative power. I visualized each statement as a ribbon of light weaving through my aura. Over time, these affirmations stopped feeling like mere slogans. They became the soundtrack of my inner dialogue. In one vivid moment, I walked through a park at dawn, sunlight dancing on dew-kissed grass. A dragonfly hovered nearby, its iridescent wings blinking in and out of focus. I smiled and acknowledged it as a messenger and emissary of possibility. A passerby glanced at me curiously, then handed me a folded note. "Your presence here reminds me to pause. Thank you." I felt my shoulders loosen as I accepted the note. Here was tangible proof that the mental seeds I planted had unfurled into a shared experience of kindness. Later that week, I read about Nikola Tesla's visionary experiments with wireless energy transmission. He imagined a world where power flowed invisibly through the air, lighting homes and cities without wires. Many contemporaries dismissed his ideas as impractical fantasies. Yet Tesla remained steadfast, writing in his diary, "My mind is a seedbed of electric blossoms." Though he faced financial ruin and public skepticism, Tesla's unwavering belief attracted investors, collaborators, and eventually a legacy that shapes our modern world. His story reminded me that attracting grand outcomes often requires enduring opposition until the world catches up with your frequency. To integrate this lesson, I began tracking not only what I attracted, but how I felt when I set intentions. I noticed that when doubt crept in like shadows, lengthening at dusk, the moments of manifestation grew sparse. Conversely, when I felt buoyed by genuine excitement, the universe responded in kind. I realized the law of attraction is less about wish fulfillment and more about vibrational coherence, aligning every thought, feeling, and action toward a singular vision. One evening, as rain pattered against my window, I visualized healing for a friend struggling with illness. I pictured their vitality restored, their laughter resonant once more. My chest tingled as I radiated that intention outward. Within 2 days, I received a message. The friend's latest tests showed remarkable improvement against all odds. Physicians expressed surprise, attributing progress to a sudden surge in immune response. I felt gratitude ripple through me, proof that collective intention can support even the most guarded systems of the body. My narrative arc continued to entwine with practical applications. I began hosting small gatherings in my living room, inviting friends to share intentions, speak affirmations, and visualize desired outcomes. We called these sessions intentional circles. Each participant left with a tangible Tokina smooth stone, or a feather symbolizing their personal goal. Over weeks, I watched as relationships deepened, collaborations blossomed, and unexpected resources emerged. The simple act of communal focus multiplied the potency of individual practice. Reflecting on these experiences, I recognized a shift in how I perceived reality. I no longer saw events as random. I saw them as chapters in a story co-authored between my soul and the cosmos. Every encounter, every coincidence, was a carefully placed word on the page of my unfolding narrative. I understood that mastery of the law of attraction demands both clarity of vision and the humility to recognize one's role in the cosmic dance. It is less about controlling outcomes and more about co-creating with forces far greater than oneself. As I closed the book on this section, I felt that the seeds planted by intention had rooted in rich soil. My inner landscape now brimmed with the vibrant greenery of possibility. I sensed that the story would soon guide me towards surrender learning to allow the universe's flow without grasping too tightly at the leaves and branches I had cultivated. Main point recap. The law of attraction weaves our intentions into reality by aligning our vibrational frequency with desired outcomes, demonstrating that focused thought and emotion co-create the life we experience. Transition hint. Next, we will witness how releasing the ego's silent grip unlocks even greater expanses of potential. A hush fell over my mind the instant I acknowledged that the ego had been my quietest jailer. I sat in my study late one evening, the rare book open before me, its pages glowing in the lamp's soft light. The words on the page were simple yet profound. The true path to mastery lies in releasing the fortress of self. I felt a pang of recognition. How many times had I clung to achievements, identities, or opinions as if they were lifelines? In that moment, I understood that the ego's silent grip was the last barrier between my conscious self and the unbounded flow of the universe. My first step was to observe the ego in action. I noticed how I bristled when someone questioned my ideas, how I measured my worth by accolades or social validation. The most startling revelation came during a team meeting at work. As a proposed initiative of mine faced constructive criticism, I felt a familiar churn of defensiveness. My heart rate spiked, my fists unconsciously clenched. An internal voice snapped, "They don't see the brilliance here." I paused the conversation and stepped aside, closing my eyes to catch my breath. The book's guidance echoed, "Witness without attachment." In doing so, I could observe my reaction as though I were watching a scene in a play, detached from the personal sting of critique. This act of witnessing led me to one of history's most luminous examples of ego dissolution, Nelson Mandela in Robben Island's courtyard. For 18 years, he endured isolation and injustice, yet refused to let bitterness define him. When released, he emerged not as a man broken by ego's claims to justice, but as a leader who transcended personal grievance to foster national reconciliation. Mandela's greatness did not arise from ignoring his pain, but from releasing the need to be right, to be vindicated, and to hold on to past injuries. His silent surrender of ego created a space where healing could flourish for an entire nation. Inspired, I developed a daily ritual, a 10-minute mirror meditation. Each morning I faced my reflection with an open gaze, noticing judgments about my appearance, thoughts that touted my strengths, or whisperings that belittled my flaws. Instead of engaging, I simply noted each thought. "So, you're proud," or "Here's the critic again," then let it drift away. Over days, weeks, this practice weakened the ego's voice, revealing a deeper stillness beneath the ebb and flow of self-talk. One afternoon, I found myself in a heated discussion with a friend over a political topic. Our voices rose, and I felt the familiar surge of self-righteousness. Before responding, I paused and mentally traced the sensation back to the ego's demand to win the argument. I held that moment of awareness like a precious gem, then chose gentleness over retort. "I see your point," I said calmly, "and I'd like to understand more." The tension dissolved. Later, as we parted, my friend thanked me for listening without judgment, a simple gesture, yet profound proof that when the ego rests, genuine connection awakens. The book instructed that releasing the ego is not an act of annihilation, but of integration. I was to welcome the ego's voice as a servant rather than a master. So I began assigning it the role of advisor, consulting it when practical decisions were needed, but declining its counsel when it demanded identity, affirmation. When praising words came my way, "Your presentation was brilliant," I thanked the giver and offered gratitude inwardly, then released the compliment rather than clutching it. When criticism stung, I allowed myself to feel the discomfort, but recognized it as the ego's plea for validation, not a verdict on my worth. A transformative moment arrived unexpectedly during a silent retreat. For 3 days, I maintained complete speechlessness, observing every impulse to speak. On the second day, I reached a breaking point. Frustration roared within me like storm waves. I felt compelled to voice my annoyance, to assert my autonomy. But recalling Mandela's composure and the book's guidance, I simply sat in the storm, the anger ebbed into a profound quiet. A gentle compassion for the younger mezzo, hungry for recognition, unfolded. In that emptiness, I discovered an expansive calm that no praise or blame could disturb. Parallel to my practice, I revisited the example of Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who penned meditations on self-mastery. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." His counsel wasn't morbid, but liberating. By remembering life's impermanence, attachment to egoic narratives loosened. I adopted a journaling exercise modeled on his work. Each night, I reflected on situations where ego arose, wrote down the transient nature of each thought, and affirmed my deeper identity beyond these fleeting stories. As the ego's fortress crumbled, I felt a profound shift in creativity. Ideas flowed not from a place of seeking acclaim, but from pure curiosity. One morning, I awoke with a poem unbidden. Within the silent void I stand, beyond the self I once had planned. No crown to hold, no scepter tight, just boundless space to birth the light. I added it to my journal, marveling at how uninhibited expression emerged when the ego no longer censored my inner voice. In the external world, too, my relationships transformed. A colleague struggling with personal loss confessed her grief, and I listened not as an expert offering solutions, but as a fellow traveler sharing silent presence. She later told me it was the simplest kindness she had felt in months, proof that when the ego bows, compassion stands ready. The book's passage resonated anew. Ego is but a mask. Beneath it lies the face of unity. I realized that dissolving ego is not dimming one's light, but revealing the common flame that connects all beings. My own identity shifted from isolated I to we, a collective of experiences flowing through shared existence. As I prepared to close this chapter on ego's silent dissolution, I sensed the path onward required a new lesson, harnessing this liberated state to focus intention without interference. The ego's release had cleared the stage. Now, the act of intention could unfold unimpeded. I smiled as I turned the page, ready to explore how inner memory, the next chapter, could guide my journey with clarity and grace. Main point recap. Releasing the ego's grip unveils a deeper stillness, fosters genuine connection, and transforms creativity by integrating the self as a humble observer rather than a demanding master. Transition hint. Next, we will explore techniques to harness inner memory, unlocking lessons buried within our subconscious. I perched on the edge of my sofa one evening as the last rays of sunset filtered through sheer curtains, casting amber patterns across the pages of the rare book. A line caught my eye. "Within the vault of your subconscious lie treasures waiting to awaken." My pulse quickened. I realized the book was inviting me to become an archaeologist of my own soul, to unearth lessons long buried beneath layers of habit and forgetfulness. Memories are not static artifacts, but living whispers, encoded with wisdom that can guide present action if only I learned the art of recollection. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, recalling a childhood game I once played in my grandmother's attic. Dust motes danced like fireflies in fading light as I crawled beneath old trunks, discovering faded postcards and brittle photographs. Each artifact nudged a memory, the scent of her lavender sachets, the echo of her humming lullabies. That attic had become my first memory palace, though I never knew the term. In that moment, I sensed how physical spaces can anchor recollection, and I vowed to recreate such palaces within my mind. To begin, I chose a familiar place, my childhood home's back porch. I visualized the weathered wooden railing, the chipped blue paint, and the climbing roses along the trellis. Opening an imaginary door, I stepped into an inner chamber where each piece of furniture represented a chapter of my life. The rocking chair held my first taste of independence. The rickety table, the struggles of adolescence, and the swing bench, the blossoming of young love. I walked from station to station, pausing at each to breathe in the sensations, the emotions, the latent insights. My experiment found scientific resonance in the work of Dr. Carl Jung, who employed active imagination to dialogue with his unconscious. Jung believed that dreams, fantasies, and visions are doorways to hidden knowledge. In his Red Book, he recorded conversations with archetypal figures until their messages crystallized into guidance for his life and patient's transformation. Inspired by Jung, I began a nightly ritual. Before sleep, I'd revisit my memory palace, selecting one room to explore further. I'd ask a question: what did I learn from my teenage fear of failure? And allow images or feelings to arise without judgment. One night, I entered the rickety table room and felt a tight knot in my chest. I recalled the crushing disappointment of missing a scholarship, the voice in my head whispering, "You're not enough." But then I remembered how that rejection spurred me to master new skills and eventually exceed expectations in my career. The memory's pain transformed into gratitude for resilience. I journaled, "Failure was the furnace forging my strength." By reframing the memory's meaning, I reclaimed its power as a catalyst rather than a curse. Across days, I expanded my toolkit. I experimented with sensory anchors, a specific scent of sandalwood for courage, the soft hum of ambient music for introspection, and a smooth riverstone pressed between thumb and forefinger to signal grounding, each anchor linked to a memory of triumph or clarity. Whenever I needed guidance facing a difficult decision or creative block, I'd activate an anchor and return to the recollection it represented. The stone warmed in my hand like a beacon, reminding me of past resourcefulness amid uncertainty. I found a parallel in literary history: Marcel Proust's Madeleine. In Search of Lost Time, a simple taste of a tea-soaked biscuit floods his narrator with childhood memories, cascading into profound reflections on identity and time. Proust's insight showed how a single sensory cue can unlock labyrinths of recollection. Borrowing his technique, I prepared a small ritual. I'd steep a unique blend of chamomile and mint tea, savor a particular pastry, and sit quietly until a memory welled up. Then let it guide my meditation. Over time, these rituals became reliable portals to inner guidance. To deepen perceptual recall, I practiced free writing at dawn. With pen poised, I wrote without pause or filter, allowing fragments of memories, dialogue, and insights to pour onto the page. Often, I began with a simple prompt: describe a moment you felt truly alive. The words that emerged guided me back to experiences when I stepped beyond comfort zone solo travels, daring artistic experiments, moments of surrender that led to unexpected flow states. Free writing revealed patterns. I learned that my soul thrived on creative risk and authentic connection, lessons I might have overlooked in the rush of daily life. One morning, my pen paused over the page as an image of my first poetry reading returned. The trembling at the microphone, the hush of the crowd, and then the swell of applause when I finished. I remember the exhilaration and the tremor of vulnerability, and how that vulnerability birthed a sense of belonging. I underlined the passage and carried it into the rest of my day, reminding myself that opening my truth to the world invites the world's mirror back. Alongside my personal practice, I discovered the story of Maya Angelou, who returned to a childhood trauma through memoir writing, transforming her painful memories into universal truths. Her recollections in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings didn't merely recount events. They alchemized suffering into empowerment, inspiring countless readers. Angelou's courage taught me that retrieving difficult memories can illuminate hidden strengths and foster empathy. Thus, I incorporated moments of shadow work into my memory palace chakras of pain and betrayal so that I could sit with them, bathe them in compassion, and integrate their wisdom into my narrative. In doing so, I realized memory is not just about recall, but about recomposition. I began reconstructing fragmented recollections into cohesive stories, writing small vignettes that connected the dots between past and present. One such vignette traced the lineage of loss in my family: a grandmother's migration, my father's orphaned childhood, my own inherited patterns of self-reliance. By weaving this lineage into a single narrative, I discovered recurring themes of courage and reinvention. Those themes became guideposts for decisions I face today, reminding me that resilience flows through generations. To ensure integration, I practiced voice recording, speaking aloud the stories I wrote, then listening back as if to a friend. The sound of my own voice, reliving pivotal moments, heightened the emotional resonance and revealed nuances I might have missed on the page. One recording surfaced a long-forgotten detail: the rhythm of my mother's lullaby, which I had unconsciously emulated in the cadence of my own speech. Recognizing this, I adopted a gentler vocal tone during tense conversations, harnessing the lullaby's soothing power to calm conflicts rather than inflame them. Through these techniques, memory palaces, sensory anchors, free writing, shadow integration, lineage storytelling, and voice recordings, I map the terrain of my hidden self and learn to navigate it with intention. Each recovered lesson was a torch illuminating the next step of my journey, a compass calibrating my direction. The rare book's guidance became less a set of instructions and more a live blueprint, adapting to each fresh insight I retrieved from the vault of memory. As I closed the journal on this section, I sensed the richness of my inner archive, no longer a dusty trove, but an active library of wisdom. The shards of forgotten moments had coalesced into a mosaic of understanding, each piece informing my path forward. Main point recap. Techniques like memory palaces, sensory anchors, free writing, and shadow integration unlock subconscious lessons, transforming buried memories into living guides for present action. Transition hint. Next, we will explore how harmonizing emotional alignment amplifies the power of these retrieved lessons. A soft glow settled in my chest as I read the book's instruction. When heart and mind resonate in harmony, reality bows to your intention. It wasn't enough to think clearly or remember deeply. My emotions needed to be attuned to the highest frequencies of my purpose. The chapter guided me toward exercises that wove feeling into focus, transforming raw longing into coherent energy. I began with a simple daily practice at sunrise. I sat in stillness, placed one hand over my heart and the other atop my navel, and breathed slowly for 5 minutes. As I inhaled, I envisioned drawing warmth from the horizon. As I exhaled, I released tension from my body. With each breath, I named an emotion that aligned with my intention: gratitude for abundance, courage for creativity, compassion for connection. Rather than forcing a positive feeling, I invited authenticity by acknowledging any shadows first. I noticed my fear of change, and I welcome steadiness. Over weeks, I felt the subtle alchemy of this ritual. Anxiety surrendered its grip, and a gentle optimism flowed in its place. The first tangible shift appeared one drizzly afternoon when I faced a looming deadline at work. Normally, stress would coil in my stomach, urging frantic action, but I paused, closed my eyes, and invoked my sunrise practice. Hand on heart, breath attuned to gratitude for the opportunity to learn. I felt tension unspool, and sudden clarity emerged about where to focus my effort. I completed the task with composed energy rather than scattered rush, earning praise for both speed and quality. The contrast between my former reactive self and this new centered presence was striking. I recalled the example of Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps by aligning his feelings with a transcendent purpose. He wrote that prisoners who found meaning a memory of a loved one, a vision of a future lecture, maintained an inner conviction that shielded them from despair. Frankl's logotherapy demonstrated that emotional alignment with purpose can override even the most brutal conditions. Inspired, I recognized that aligning with uplifting emotions wasn't escapism but survival. It anchored my mind in renewal rather than chaos. To deepen the practice, I explored the HeartMath technique of coherent breathing, developed by researchers at the Institute of HeartMath. They found that when paced breathing synchronizes heart rhythms, cognitive performance and emotional stability improve. I set a timer for 10 minutes each afternoon, inhaling for 5 seconds, exhaling for 5, while focusing on a positive remembrance me first triumph on a creative project, the warmth of friendship, or the quiet comfort of home. Within days, I noticed greater resilience against stress and a pronounced ability to shift moods intentionally rather than slip into habitual reactions. One evening, as the wind rattled the window panes, I practiced coherent breathing before a difficult phone call with a friend about a misunderstanding. Midway through the conversation, I felt tension rising not in my mind, but as a tightness in my chest. Recognizing the signal, I paused and subtly returned to 2 cycles of coherent breath. The tightness eased, and I resumed speaking with calm compassion. My friend later remarked on the softness in my voice, admitting it eased her defensiveness. This reinforced that emotional alignment extends beyond personal equilibrium. It nurtures connection and diffuses conflict. I also incorporated a feeling map journaling exercise. Each evening, I divided a page into 3 columns: situation, emotion felt, alignment practice. Under situation, I noted moments that stirred strong feelings: joy, frustration, longing. In emotion felt, I named the precise emotion: elated, irritated, yearning. In alignment practice, I detailed which method I applied: coherent breath, gratitude visualization, or shadow acknowledgement. Over 2 weeks, patterns emerged. Irritations flared when I neglected gratitude in the morning, and moments of deep compassion coincided with focused heart-breath sessions. The map became a diagnostic tool, revealing where alignment slipped and how to recalibrate swiftly. To anchor these insights, I turned to the story of Nelson Mandela's emotional mastery. Locked away for 18 years, he chose forgiveness over hatred, envisioning a future of unity rather than vengeance. Mandela later said that nurturing forgiveness in his heart freed him more than any change in his prison walls. He aligned his deepest emotion, compassion, with the intention of reconciliation. This alignment sustained him through isolation and later guided his leadership in healing a fractured nation. Mandela's example underscored that emotional coherence with one's highest vision can reshape personal destiny and collective history. Inspired, I crafted a midweek group practice called Heart Sessions. I invited friends to join via video. We each shared a brief intention: personal growth, healing, clarity, and then guided each other through 2 minutes of coherent breathing focused on that intention. We concluded with a silent, shared moment, feeling the collective emotional field. Participants reported feeling uplifted for hours afterward, and one friend said it helped her deliver a confident presentation at work the next day. This communal reinforcement magnified individual alignment, demonstrating that when hearts tune together, the resonance grows exponentially. I also experimented with guided visualization scripts. Lying flat on my back, I imagined a beam of light descending from above, entering my crown and filtering down to my heart. There, it pooled into a radiant lake of calm and warmth. I visualized that light expanding outward with each heartbeat, touching every cell. As I practiced, I observed how certain emotions, joy, serenity, intensified the brightness, while others' fear, regret dimmed it. This biofeedback loop trained me to consciously choose feelings that intensified my inner light, thereby strengthening my alignment with purpose. A pivotal moment arrived when I faced a personal challenge: uncertainty about a major life decision. Should I relocate for a new opportunity, or stay rooted in familiar ground? I realized that logic alone couldn't resolve this. My emotions held the key. I sat with an empty journal page and wrote down my 2 options. Next to each, I recorded the emotional tone they evoked: excitement and possibility for relocation, comfort and security for staying. Then, I applied coherent breath while focusing on the feeling of expansion. My heart resonated more strongly with excitement, even though it carried risk signaling that growth lay beyond my comfort zone. Guided by emotional alignment rather than fear or analysis paralysis, I chose to embrace the new opportunity. In retrospect, I saw that the practice of emotional alignment didn't eliminate difficult feelings but integrated them. I learned to welcome trepidation as a sign of stretching beyond old boundaries and to channel excitement into purposeful action. The chapter's exercises became pillars supporting the bridge between intention and manifestation. I felt increasingly adept at shifting emotional states deliberately, creating a fertile ground for the universe to respond to. As I closed the book for this section, I sensed a growing harmony within thoughts, memories, and now emotions intertwined into a unified current directing my journey. The next chapter promised to teach me the delicate art of allowing, and I felt ready to flow. Main point recap: harmonizing emotions with intentions through practices like coherent breathing, gratitude visualization, and community heart sessions amplifies our vibrational resonance, transforming raw feelings into purposeful energy. Transition hint: next, we will explore the surrendering act of allowing the universe's flow without resistance. I awoke to the scent of pine drifting through my open window, the morning mist still clinging to the forested hills beyond my cabin. In my hand, the rare book lay open to a passage that shimmered with promise. Focused intention is the arrow that strikes the heart of creation. I felt a tingle behind my eye as a signal that my mind was ready for the next discipline. Mastering the art of unwavering focus. All my previous practices, memory retrieval, emotional alignment, ego release, had laid the foundation. Now, it was time to harness them into a single beam of concentrated will. The book guided me toward a simple yet profound exercise. Choose one goal, no matter how grand or minute, and dedicate 30 uninterrupted minutes each day solely to visualizing its fulfillment. No multitasking, no internal chatter, just the deliberate act of holding a singular vision. On my first attempt, I selected a modest goal, completing a short story I had begun months earlier. I sank into my study chair, closed my eyes, and spent the first 10 minutes recalling every detail: the protagonist's name, the scent of rain in the opening scene, the tension simmering beneath her dialogue. My mind danced between past drafts, but gradually it settled. As I inhaled, I pictured myself typing the final sentence in perfect clarity. As I exhaled, I released every distraction: incoming emails, stray thoughts, the hum of the heater. 15 minutes in, the usual restlessness surfaced. I noticed thoughts flickering. Did I respond to that message? Is the coffee brewing? I simply labeled them noise and returned to my visualization. The practice felt like training a wild horse. Each time I gently rein in the distraction, the horse grows more compliant. By the 25th minute, I entered a state of laser focus. In my mind's eye, I saw the story's ending unfold, like a film reel. The final confrontation, the soft resolution, the echo of setting sun on her face. A sense of calm certainty settled in my chest, proof that intention, when held without wavering, carves pathways in the neural landscape. I opened my eyes to find the clock reading 30 minutes exactly. Though the room and the world appeared unchanged, I felt different, empowered by the realization that my attention was not a passive stream, but a tool capable of sculpting reality. I reached for my notebook and sketched a timeline for finishing the story, confident that each writing session would align with the vision I had just reinforced. This approach mirrored the practice of Olympic athletes, such as Michael Phelps, who used mental rehearsal to perfect every stroke before entering the pool. Sports psychologists documented how Phelps would visualize each lap, each turn, even the roar of the crowd, until his neural circuits fired as though he were actually swimming. His subsequent record-breaking performances stemmed not simply from physical training, but from the cohesion of intention, mind, and muscle. In adopting his model, I recognized that focused intention bridges the gap between imagination and execution by synchronizing thought patterns with desired actions. To formalize my practice, I created a focus ritual. Each morning at 7 a.m., I sat at a small desk facing a blank wall, lit a beeswax candle, and set a timer for 30 minutes. Before lighting the candle, I spoke my goal aloud. I will complete the first draft of my short story today. Then, I stared at the flame for 30 seconds to steady my gaze, closed my eyes, and began the visualization. When the timer chimed, I extinguished the candle, journaled one sentence about the clarity I experienced, and proceeded to write for at least an hour. After a week, I saw measurable progress. Words flowed more effortlessly, plot holes became apparent before I wrote them, and characters' voices emerged with surprising depth. The ritual taught me that focus is not merely resisting distraction, but actively channeling mental energy toward a chosen endpoint. One afternoon, I tackled a more ambitious intention, organizing a community fundraiser for a local animal shelter. I visualized every aspect: the layout of tables, the laughter of children, the wagging tails of grateful dogs, and the donation boxes brimming with contributions. I replayed the scene in my mind each evening for 30 minutes, feeling genuine gratitude as though the event had already succeeded. In less than 2 months, the fundraiser exceeded its goal, raising enough to cover veterinary costs for dozens of animals. The volunteers later said the planning meetings felt effortless and aligned as if every decision fell into place by itself. I realized I had drafted a blueprint in my mind that guided actions at every level, from selecting a venue to crafting social media posts. I found support for this technique in neuroscientific research on neuroplasticity. Studies show that mental practice activates the same brain regions as physical execution, pruning irrelevant synapses while strengthening circuits related to the envisioned task. Essentially, the brain begins rehearsing success even before the body moves. By intentionally focusing, I was training my mind to anticipate and adapt to outcomes as though they were already true. To deepen mastery, I experimented with reducing the daily practice to just 1 minute at random intervals throughout the day. I called this micro-focus. When the office printer whirred, I paused and closed my eyes for 60 seconds, recalling the image of my goal fulfilled. Though brief, these surges of intention sustained the larger 30-minute ritual by reinforcing the neural pathways of focus under varied conditions. Over time, I noticed that even during chaotic momenta, sudden meeting, or impromptu discussion, I could briefly zero in on my objective and realign my attention before diving back into the present task. My journey also led me to an ancient monastic discipline, the Benedictine practice of fixed-hour prayer, where monks commit to 7 set times of devotion each day. The bell's chime interrupted work, whether scrubbing floors or copying manuscripts to bring the mind back to spiritual focus. The repetition not only sanctified time but trained the will to shift seamlessly between tasks and presence. Borrowing this structure, I set alarms at 3 random times daily, paused for 1 minute of micro-focus on my priority, then resumed my activities. The spontaneity of these interruptions developed my capacity to reclaim attention no matter the context. One morning, I awoke late and found my 30-minute ritual colliding with an urgent email about a family emergency. My impulse was to abandon focus practice and dive into logistics. Yet I paused, acknowledged the urgency, and completed a 10-minute condensed focus session on managing the crisis with calm clarity. The result was astonishing. I organized necessary support swiftly, communicated effectively, and maintained composure rather than succumbing to panic. The discipline of focused intention had become a tool for navigating both creative projects and real-life challenges. Reflecting on these experiences, I saw that mastery of focus requires both structure and flexibility. The formal 30-minute ritual builds deep neural grooves, while micro-focus and spontaneous sessions test agility under pressure. The synergy of both ensures that intention remains a constant companion, ready to be summoned at will. As I close this section in the rare book, I sensed the next lesson beckoning, learning to release the tension of striving and surrender control to letting the art of allowing and receiving. Having sharpened my arrow of intention, I was ready to relax my grip and trust the wind of universal flow. Main point recap. Focused intention, cultivated through dedicated rituals and mental rehearsal, harnesses neuroplasticity to transform vision into reality, while micro-focus practices ensure agility under real-world conditions. Transition hint. Next, we will explore how surrendering to the universe's flowering and receiving completes the cycle of creation. I settled onto a moss-covered stone beside a tranquil stream, the rare book open on my lap. A line shimmered across the page. To receive, you must first release. The words felt like a breath of fresh air, an invitation to let go of control and surrender to life's rhythm. I closed my eyes and listened to the water's steady murmur, sensing how its flow embodied the art of allowing, yielding to the contours of each rock, yet persisting toward the open sea. The chapter began with a simple exercise. Each morning, spend 5 minutes examining areas where I had been forcing outcomes. I identified 3 zones of over-effort: the inbox of my work email, my writing schedule, and my plan for a community gathering. With each area, I visualized the outcome I desired, then pictured my hands opening, releasing any tight grip, and watching the vision unfold without interference. Surprisingly, this brief ritual illuminated how my striving had created blockages, like clenched fists preventing water from reaching thirsty earth. At the cafe later that day, I experimented with allowing in a micro-practice. As I stirred my tea, I set an intention for a smooth conversation with a colleague I'd been trying to impress. Instead of crafting precise talking points, I told myself, I release expectations, let our dialogue flow freely. When she arrived, I listened without planning my next response, noticing her stories and responding authentically. The encounter felt effortless. Ideas emerged spontaneously, and we found common ground I hadn't anticipated. This simple act of relinquishing control transformed tension into genuine connection. I recalled the story of Rumi, the 13th century poet mystic, who taught that the soul is like a reed flute. To sound its purest tone, it must remain hollow. He wrote, "Empty yourself of yourself so that God can fill you." Rumi's metaphor resonated deeply. Allowing isn't passive resignation, but cultivating an open vessel. Inspired, I created a hollowing meditation. I sat in silence, visualized each belief or plan as water pooling in a cup, then tipped the cup upside down, watching the water drain away. After several cycles, I felt a palpable lightness, as if my mind had more room to receive unexpected insights. That evening, a real test arrived. I'd been organizing a local fundraiser and had meticulously arranged every detail: vendors, schedules, promotions. Yet on the day of the event, heavy rain threatened to derail outdoor activities. My instinct was panic. Scramble to cover tents, send cancellation notices. Instead, I paused and applied the practice of allowing. I release my attachment to how this must look. I invited volunteers to improvise setting up indoors, arranging impromptu music performances. The shift from rigid plans to flexible flow created an even cozier atmosphere. Attendees praised the spontaneous charm of the event, and donations surpassed my original goal by 20%. To deepen my understanding, I studied the example of Thomas Edison. While inventing the light bulb, Edison famously tested thousands of filaments and embraced each failure as information rather than defeat. He allowed the process to guide him, saying, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's openness to outcomes beyond his designs exemplified how allowing becomes a catalyst for innovation. By treating each setback as a clue, he remained receptive to breakthroughs that rigid expectation would have obscured. I devised a daily flow journal. Each night I recorded moments when I forced control and moments when I allowed flow, noting the emotional tone and results. Patterns emerged. Forced attempts often led to tension and limited solutions, while acts of allowing generated creativity and ease. Over 2 weeks, I shifted my default from push to permission, catching myself when I tightened my grip and consciously softening my approach. In one poignant moment, I practiced allowing in my own body. Years of poor posture had resulted from trying to hold myself together. Guided by the book's advice, I stood against a wall and consciously released muscular tension, dropping my shoulders, tilting my pelvis, letting my spine lengthen. Though simple, this act of bodily surrender unlocked a sense of spaciousness and eased chronic back pain that had plagued me for months. The alignment between physical allowing and psychological surrender became unmistakable. Finally, I observed that allowing and receiving are inseparable. To fully receive the universe's gifts, insights, opportunities, relationships, I had to maintain receptivity. I ended each day with a short litany. I am open to life's surprises. I welcome gifts I did not foresee. I trust the unfolding. This affirmation, spoken softly in the dark, anchored my mind in a posture of expectancy rather than anxiety. By the close of the chapter, I felt released from the strain of perfectionism. My life no longer resembled a rigid sculpture I was carving, but a living tapestry I was weaving with open hands. The art of allowing had taught me that true power lies not in forcing outcomes, but in partnering with life's inherent intelligence. Main point recap. Allowing and receiving emerge through practices that relinquish control, visualizing release, embracing spontaneity, studying pioneers like Rumi and Edison, and journaling Floto create open space for unexpected gifts. Transition hint. Next, we dive into decoding dreams as guiding maps to refine our navigation of this awakened journey. I opened the rare book to a page stamped with a crescent moon icona, quiet signal that dreams would become my next compass. The text began, "In the realm of night, whispers of the soul emerge." I closed my eyes and recalled the vivid vision that had startled me weeks earlier, standing on a cliff's edge, the horizon painted in violet and gold, a massive spiral staircase descending into mist. I knew then that my psyche was offering a roadmap I was only beginning to learn how to decipher. To decode these nightly messages, the book recommended a dream dialogue practice. Each morning upon waking, before any thought could scatter the dream's essence, I lay still and recorded every detail. Colors, emotions, symbols, and dialogue. In one entry, I noted a phoenix alighting on a weathered tome, its feathers igniting in embers while the book's pages turned themselves. I sensed this image spoke to renewal emerging from ancient wisdom, yet I hesitated to impose my own meaning prematurely. Instead, I applied the technique of active imagination inspired by Carl Jung. I re-entered the dream in meditation, assuming the role of both dreamer and guide. I visualized myself approaching the phoenix, asking, "What message do you bear?" In response, the bird's ember-laced eyes gazed into mine, and I felt a warmth spreading through my chest. The staircase, it seemed, invited me to descend into the subconscious, to retrieve insights I would otherwise overlook in daylight's logic. Historical figures attest to the power of dream decoding. Mary Shelley, on the brink of writing Frankenstein, awoke from a sleepwalking vision of a scientist kneeling beside his creation, some hideous phantasm of a man. That dream's vivid narrative propelled her to pen a tale that forever changed literature. Similarly, I recognized that my own dream was a seedone whose unfolding story could shape my waking journey. I developed a nightly ritual. Before sleep, I selected a question: what guidance does my soul have for my creative path? And asked it 3 times aloud. Then I placed a small amethyst under my pillow, its violet gleam believed to enhance intuitive dreaming. Upon waking, I stayed motionless for several breaths, then whispered the question again before scrawling the dream in my journal. Often, themes recurred: spirals, flights, ancestral voices. Patterns began to align with waking life. I experienced bursts of creative clarity on days following certain dream motifs. To systematize my interpretations, I created a dream lexicon spreadsheet. Under symbol, I listed images like phoenix, spiral staircase, or flooded library. Under emotion, I noted feelings such as awe, fear, or curiosity. Under insight, I added intuitive notes: embrace transformation, descend into forgotten knowledge. Over a month, the lexicon grew into a personalized atlas, revealing how specific symbols resonated uniquely with my evolutionary path. A striking example occurred when I dreamt of a broken compass spinning wildly. In the waking day, I faced a decision about collaborating on a major project. Puzzled, I revisited my lexicon. Spinning compass signified misdirection when I neglected my inner voice. I realized the collaboration opportunity felt prestigious, but misaligned with my emerging purpose. Trusting the dream's counsel, I respectfully declined the offer, freeing me to pursue a smaller venture that ultimately brought more fulfillment and impact. I also studied examples from indigenous traditions, where shamans regarded dreams as messages from the spirit world. In the Seneca practice of dream feasts, community members shared their nocturnal visions and collectively interpreted their meaning. Inspired, I formed a small dream circle with 2 close friends. Each morning, we exchanged our dreams and insights, weaving together diverse perspectives. The act of communal interpretation enriched my own understanding, as symbols unfolded new layers of meaning through others' reflections. Yet, I encountered challenges. One night, I dreamt of a tempestuous sea, waves crashing against the hull of a lone ship. My initial interpretation turbulence, in my emotional life, felt too simplistic. Returning to active imagination, I pictured myself aboard the ship. The deck groaned as I steadied the mast, and a voice whispered, "Your vessel is sturdy. Learn to navigate chaos." I realized the storm symbolized not a warning, but an affirmation of resilience. I possessed the inner fortitude to steer through upheaval. To honor this, I crafted a dream invocation practice. Upon waking from intense dreams, I stood before a mirror, recounted the imagery aloud, and asked, "How can I embody this truth today?" Speaking my dream into the glass anchored its message in my action. After the storm ship dream, I approached my day with renewed confidence, tackling a backlog of complex tasks without hesitation, proof that integrating dream guidance empowers real-world challenges. As weeks passed, my nightly journals and lexicon mapped an undercurrent of wisdom that pulsed beneath conscious thought. I saw how dreams served as premonitions, mirrors, and guides, each one a thread in the tapestry of my awakening. The Rare Books Council had taught me to approach dreams not as curiosities but as living archives of the soul's intelligence. Main point recap. Dreams, decoded through practices like active imagination, lexicon building, and communal dream circles, serve as guiding maps, offering profound insights and actionable wisdom for our waking journey. Transition hint. Next, we will explore how tuning into the soul's rhythmic signal sets innate patterns and synchronicities can further illuminate our path. I awoke before dawn yet again, as the sky's inky canvas gradually ceded to pale lavender light. The rare book lay open to a page marked with a spiral wave icon, and its words beckoned, "Your soul speaks in rhythms. Learn to dance to its secret beats." I traced the symbol with my fingertip, feeling a pulsing resonance beneath my skin. It was time to tune into the subtle patterns that guided my energy, creativity, and intuition signals, as steady and reliable as the tides. My first task was to observe natural rhythms within my own body. I kept a simple log each day, noting the hours when focus felt effortless, when creativity surged, when fatigue crept in. Over a fortnight, I noticed a clear pattern. My sharpest mental acuity arrived between 9 and 11 in the morning. A lull descended in mid-afternoon around 3, and a second, softer wave of insight washed over me just after 7 in the evening. Armed with this data, I reshuffled my schedule, reserving mornings for writing, afternoons for meetings and mundane tasks, evenings for artistic exploration. The shift felt transformative. No longer was I swimming against my own current. I was riding its flow. The Rare Book prescribed a second exercise: tracking synchronistic events across time. Each night, I recorded 2 coincidence unexpected meetings, chance ideas, repeating numbers on clocks. On the first night, I noted seeing 3 ravens in flight and then noticing the number 333 on a license plate. The next day, an email arrived from a colleague referencing triads in creative collaboration. I logged these under triad patterns, suspecting my soul was nudging me toward the power of 3, perhaps as an invitation to structure projects in trifecta phases. As the list grew, I saw clusters, sequences of 4s around planning stages, 5s around decision points. These repeating motifs felt like breadcrumbs left by my deeper self, a rhythmic code waiting to be deciphered. I was reminded of Galileo Galilei's discovery of the isochronism of the pendulum. While watching the swinging lamp in Pisa's cathedral, he noticed its period remained constant regardless of swing amplitude. That insight, grounded in rhythmic observation, unlocked precise measurements of time and revolutionized physics. Galileo's attunement to a simple rhythm led to profound breakthroughs. In that spirit, I resolved to treat my own patterns as scientific data, subject them to attentive study, and trust their guiding wisdom. To refine my practice, I created a rhythm map on a large corkboard. I divided it into 4 quadrants: energy, creativity, intuition. Restand plotted daily entries using colored pens: yellow for high energy, blue for creative surges, green for intuitive insights, red for deep fatigue. Over weeks, the visual mosaic revealed a cyclical dance: creative peaks aligned with intuitive highs every 7th day, energy dips synced with rest cycles every 3rd day. Recognizing this, I scheduled heavy brainstorming sessions on day 7 and carved out deliberate rest on day 3. By honoring these innate pulses, my productivity and well-being harmonized. One particularly vivid instance occurred when I was wrestling with a complex narrative arc for a community play I was directing. My storyboard felt tangled, and every attempt to rearrange scenes seemed forced. Consulting my rhythm map, I noticed I was attempting this work on what the map flagged as a low creativity, high fatigue day. Instead of pushing through, I switched tasks revising grant proposals, which required less imaginative energy. 2 days later, on a flagged creative surge morning, I returned to the storyboard and effortlessly realigned characters' journeys into a resonant structure. It felt as though the narrative had been waiting for the right beat to reveal itself. The rare book further guided me to engage with external rhythms, moon phases, planetary alignments, seasonal cycles. I began tracking my intentions in relation to the lunar calendar. For 2 weeks, I observed the waxing moon's surge in outward activity and initiation, then the waning moon's invitation to release and reflect. I scheduled new project launches on the crescent moon and planning for completion on the gibbous. The correlation felt uncanny. Meetings arranged during the waxing phase gained momentum swiftly, while tasks begun during the waning moon naturally fell away or matured. This practice cultivated a profound respect for the larger cosmic rhythms that intersected with my personal cycles. To deepen communal connection, I invited friends to share their own rhythm logs in a weekly online salon. Each participant presented their energy curve and synchronistic events. We discovered fascinating intersections. 2 friends reported similar creative peaks on Tuesdays. Another noted intuition surges coinciding with solstice festivals. Sharing these patterns fostered empathy and collective insight, what one friend called the orchestra of our lives. We even devised collaborative sessions coinciding with mutual creative highs, maximizing our pooled inspiration. I also explored how rhythm shapes language and music. I sat at my piano keyboard and practiced scales not by technique drills but by embodying emotional rhythms, the heartbeat pulse in a slow adagio, the exhilaration in a brisk allegro. Composers like Ludwig van Beethoven famously incorporated his own rhythmic heart patterns into his work, suffering from health issues, yet transmuting those internal beats into symphonic glory. I experimented similarly, allowing irregular heartbeats felt during moments of excitement to dictate tempo changes and improvisations. The resulting melodies felt deeply personal, as if my own life force had been translated into sound. One evening I witnessed an even subtler signal, the pattern of my breath during extended meditation. I noticed that at certain points, my exhalations lengthened naturally, followed by brief pauses before inhalation. Curious, I timed these cycles and discovered a pattern. 5 seconds exhale, 2-second pause, 5 seconds inhale. I integrated this into my coherent breathing practice and immediately felt a deeper sense of calm, as if my body recognized its own native rhythm. It was a reminder that the most profound signals often lie hidden within the smallest pulses. Interested in how ancient cultures harnessed rhythm, I delved into the Maori tradition of haka chants, where coordinated rhythm and movement unite community, convey emotion, and prepare warriors. The synchronized drum beats and vocal calls create a collective rhythm that aligns the group's mind and body. Inspired, I introduced rhythmic clapping and vocal chants into my intentional circles brief sequences of 3 claps, then a spoken affirmation to unify participants' energy. The effect was palpable. Individuals reported feeling more grounded and connected, as though their personal beats had merged into a coherent group frequency. As I progressed, I realized that rhythms, whether internal or external, simple or complex, serve as roadmaps to deeper synchronicity. Learning to listen, map, and honor them transformed my actions from random improvisations into a mindful choreography. Every decision, every creative burst, became part of a larger dance, one that resonated with both personal purpose and universal cadence. Main point recap. By observing and mapping personal energy cycles, synchronistic patterns, lunar phases, and even heartbeat rhythms, we learn to align our actions with the soul's innate signals, transforming scattered effort into a harmonious dance of co-creation. Transition hint. Next, we will explore the dynamic balance of giving and receiving as the energetic exchange that sustains abundance. I found myself standing at the edge of a bustling farmer's market, baskets of fresh produce piled high, vendors calling out their wares in cheerful rhythm. The air was alive with the scent of citrus and herbs, and I held the rare book in one hand, its pages bookmarked at the chapter on energetic exchange. The text read, "Abundance flows in the dance of giving and receiving." I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply, imagining my own energy as part of that market's vibrant circulationa, continual flow between giver and receiver. The book proposed an exercise. For 1 week, Deliberately alternate between acts of giving and receptivity each day, and journal the resulting shifts in energy. On Monday morning, I began by offering genuine compliments to 3 stranger-san elderly woman's bright scarf, a barista's latte art, a child's contagious laugh, and simply said, "Thank you for sharing your beauty." Each recipient lit up, and I felt warmth ripple through me as if I'd sown seeds in unseen soil. That afternoon, I practiced receiving. I allowed a colleague to praise my recent presentation without deflecting, saying only, "I appreciate your kindness." I noticed a slight discomfort in accepting praise, a reflex conditioned by humility or self-doubt, and made a mental note to explore that tension. As the week unfolded, I wove giving and receiving into every interaction. Tuesday, I brought extra granola bars to share with morning commuter crowds, handing them out without expectation of thanks. Later, I sat beside a friend who insisted on treating me to tea. This time, I received her generosity fully, savoring both the warmth of the cup and the kindness behind the gesture. The dual practice revealed an energetic yin and yang. Giving sparked expansiveness, while receiving open channels of gratitude and humility. I recalled the example of Mahatma Gandhi, who emphasized simple service as a path to spiritual abundance. During the Salt March, he instructed followers to give salt to villagers who couldn't access it, creating a ripple of solidarity and trust. Yet he also received inspiration from those he served, drawing strength from their shared struggle. This dynamic fueled a movement that transcended mere protest. It became a collective act of mutual empowerment. Gandhi's balance of giving and receiving showed me that true abundance arises when neither side dominates the exchange. Midweek, I experimented with a generosity ledger. Each evening, I listed contributions I had made, time, resources, attention, and blessings I had received, insights, support, material comfort. Curious patterns emerged. Days when I focused too heavily on giving without receptivity led to fatigue and a sense of depletion. Days when I received without giving left me feeling undeserving or hollowed out. The ledger taught me that sustaining flow requires mindful equilibrium, like balancing breaths in an embodied meditation. On Thursday, I volunteered at a local community kitchen. I ladled soup to hungry patrons, engaging them with warm conversation. A man in line looked me in the eye and said with quiet gratitude, "Your kindness feeds more than my stomach." His words lodged in my heart, reminding me that our contributions can reverberate far beyond our intention. Later, a volunteer offered to drive me home, refusing any thanks or payment. I felt a surge of gratitude but noticed an impulse to explain myself, to earn his kindness. Catching that reflex, I simply accepted his offer with a smile, saying, "Thank you for your generosity." I felt the subtle release of walls I hadn't known I'd built around my worthiness. The next morning, I invited a mentor to lunch, offering my gratitude for her guidance. I prepared a small gift, a handmade journal inscribed with a quote, "meaningful to our work." She received it with tears in her eyes and shared her own struggles and triumphs. In sharing her story, she offered me gifts of insight and encouragement. That exchange underscored how giving with sincerity invites reciprocity on multiple levels: material, emotional, and spiritual. To extend this practice, I created a flow circle among close friends. Each meeting began with a round of give one, receive one. One person offered a piece of wisdom or resource, then another offered gratitude or need. We passed an objective smooth river stone-toe signal when someone was speaking, ensuring equitable turns. The ceremony cultivated a palpable sense of safety and abundance. Participants reported leaving sessions feeling both energized and grounded. The circle became a microcosm of balanced exchange, where generosity and receptivity coalesced into collective flourishing. I also studied modern philanthropic models, like the concept of pay it forward, popularized by Tennessee Ernie Ford's story, and expanded by social experiments in cafes offering free coffee to strangers. The phenomenon spread worldwide, illustrating how a simple act of giving can ignite waves of kindness, each recipient choosing to pass on generosity. However, in some cases, the chain faltered when recipients felt awkward or unprepared to give in turn. This highlighted the need to pair giving with explicit invitations to receive and encouraging recipients to embrace that receipt as an integral part of the cycle. Reflecting on my journaling and experiences, I saw that giving without readiness to receive can create a lopsided dynamic, and receiving without willingness to give can generate stagnation. The rare book advised an affirmation, "I am both a vessel and a wellspring." I wrote it atop my ledger and spoke it aloud each morning. Over time, the mantra shifted my default posture, transforming gratitude from a fleeting emotion into a stable current within me. One evening, I faced a test. I had pains in my lower back and wrist from overworking. Instead of pushing through, I scheduled a session with a massage therapist. As I lay on the table, I consciously practiced receiving, sinking into the therapist's care, resisting the urge to control pressure or apologize for needing help. I felt my body soften and gratitude flow through each muscle. Afterwards, I left the clinic lighter, energized, and reminded that self-care is as vital a part of giving and receiving as external acts of service. On the final day of my week-long experiment, I gathered the flow circle and shared reflections. We each recounted moments when the cycle had faltered and when it had soared. I realized that abundance is not a static reservoir, but a dynamic ecosystem reliant on continuous exchange. In closing the circle, we passed around a single candle each of us, lighting our neighbors from our own flame until the group was bathed in soft light. The ritual symbolized the truth that our individual lights grow brighter when passed from hand to hand. As I closed the chapter, I felt my own energy systems rebalance. I no longer viewed generosity and gratitude as separate virtues. They were intertwined expressions of the same life force. The market's shouts and the candle's glow, the soup ladled and the massage received all, were threads in a tapestry of mutual giving and receiving that sustained and amplified abundance. Main point recap. Balanced exchange of giving and receiving sustains energetic flow-through, intentional acts, communal rituals, and mindful acceptance, reminding us that abundance flourishes in the dance between vessel and wellspring. Transition hint. Next, we step into the final section, embodying the light as conscious creators and sharing our awakened power. I sat at the threshold of dawn. The book opened to its final chapter. The seal of a radiant sun embossed the page, and beneath it lay the words, "To embody the light is to become the living testament of all you have learned." In that moment, I understood that the journey through readiness, attraction, ego release, memory, emotion, intention, allowance, dreams, rhythms, and exchange had prepared me for this culmination, stepping fully into the role of conscious creator, shining the light I had discovered within. The chapter invited a unifying practice. I was to choose a personal mission and offering aligned with my soul's purpose and commit to a daily ritual that integrated all prior disciplines. Mine emerged organically. I would craft a weekly podcast episode sharing insights from this journey, weaving stories of transformation with guided exercises. This medium would allow me to speak in my own voice, share dreams decoded, lead listeners in coherent breathing, and invite them into their own memory palaces. By giving voice to the teachings, I would both share the light and reinforce my own embodiment. I began by outlining the first episode. I visualized listeners gathering by candlelight, headphones on, expecting a seamless narrative. I rehearsed in my mind, opening with the cosmic key moment, guiding them through a breath exercise, inviting reflection on a childhood memory, and concluding with an intention-setting ritual. I practiced the script aloud, noticing where my tone faltered or warmth waned. Each iteration aligned my inner resonance with the outer delivery. In rehearsal, I felt a hum of authenticity proof that embodying the light required congruence between heart, mind, voice, and presence. To ground this external offering, I revisited Mandela's commitment to service. After South Africa's transition, he established programs that uplifted children, using his platform to amplify hope rather than dwell on past pain. Mandela embodied the light not through speeches alone, but through tangible actions that reflected his forgiveness, resilience, and unity. Inspired, I scheduled volunteer hours at a youth literacy program, reading stories and mentoring young writers. Each session became an opportunity to model the same principles I taught, demonstrating that embodied light transcends theory, it breathes through deeds. The chapter emphasized that embodiment demands vulnerability. I had to share not only triumphs but also missteps, the times my breath practice faltered, when my dreams confused rather than guided, when allowing felt like surrender. So, in my podcast, I scripted a segment recounting the stormship dream and my initial misinterpretation. I described leaning into active imagination until the message of resilience emerged. By revealing uncertainty, I invited listeners to embrace their own flawed beginnings as part of the awakening process. I also recognized the importance of community. The book cited the Dalai Lama's approach of intertwining personal practice with collective harmony. Each morning, he leads prayers for global peace, channeling personal compassion into a broader field of intention. To mirror this, I launched a companion online forum where listeners could share their experiences, memory palace designs, dream journals, breath coherence trackers, and encourage one another. This living forum became a tapestry of individual awakenings woven into a collective tapestry of light. One afternoon, while editing the pilot episode, I felt a tremor of fear. What if no one listens? What if I stumble over words? My ego rattled in its last stronghold. Remembering the mirror meditation, I paused, faced my reflection on the recording screen, and labeled each anxious thought. There's the critic, there's the doubter. Then I released them through a brief allowance, ritual imagining them draining away like ink. I resumed recording with a calm smile, grateful for the reminder that embodiment requires not perfection, but presence. The chapter also urged me to measure impact. I crafted simple metrics, listener feedback, forum activity, and my own sense of alignment after each session. I tracked rhythms, me energy dips and peaks during editing and live recording to schedule tasks in harmony with my natural cycles. I noticed that recording during my post-sunset creativity surge produced more engaging content, while editing in morning focus hours ensured clarity. By honoring these signals, I sustained momentum without burnout. A pivotal moment occurred when a listener emailed. She had used my guided dream decoding to reconcile with a family estrangement, igniting a healing conversation. Her words brought tears to my eyes, a testament that embodying the light radiates beyond personal transformation into collective uplift. I realized that each seed sown in my own consciousness now blossomed in others' lives, a living proof of reciprocal creation. To further anchor my mission, I adopted the analogy of a lighthouse. A lighthouse stands unwavering on rocky shores, its light guiding vessels through storms. It neither controls the ships nor commands their passage. It simply shines. I designed a small desktop lamp, affixed with the seedling and sun symbol from the book's cover, as my lighthouse light, each day before engaging with listeners or mentees. I lit this lamp and recited my mission affirmation. I embody wisdom. I reflect the light for others to find their path. The physical act of lighting became a ritual that synchronized my intention, emotion, and focus into a single gesture. As the chapter drew to its close, I sat in the courtyard with the lamp glowing at dusk. I reflected on the tapestry of practices, readiness that opened the door, attraction that planted intentions, surrender that unlocked flow, memory that provided maps, emotion that fueled resonance, focus that carved pathways, dreams that guided direction, rhythms that orchestrated timing, giving and receiving that sustained exchange, and now embodiment that wove it all into living action. I felt a deep resonance between my inner state and outward expression, a unified field of light that pulsed through every word and deed. Main point recap. Embodying the light integrates all prior disciplines through service, vulnerability, community, ritualized practices, and creative offerings, transforming personal awakening into collective illumination. As I close the final pages of The Cosmic Soul Awakening, I recognize that this journey is less a destination than a continuous dance between inner discovery and outer expression. The rare book did not present a static doctrine, but a dynamic blueprint, guiding me through thresholds of readiness, the alchemy of intention, the humility of surrender, the excavation of memory, the harmonization of emotion, the mastery of focus, the eloquence of dreams, the wisdom of rhythms, the reciprocity of giving and receiving, and ultimately, the profound act of embodiment. Each chapter served as a stair-step, elevating my consciousness and equipping me with practical tools to navigate life's complexities with grace and authenticity. True embodiment requires living the principles rather than merely understanding them. It demands that we weave spiritual practices into our daily routines, From mindful breathing at dawn to service in community kitchens. From journaling vivid dreams to sharing our vulnerabilities in creative forums. By integrating these disciplines, we become beacons in our own right lighthouses whose unwavering presence guides others through their storms without imposing direction or judgment. Our moral authority arises from authenticity, the congruence between what we teach and how we live. Moreover, the journey of embodiment thrives on reciprocity. The light we shine externally is reflected back to us in the transformation of others. Mentoring a young writer, guiding a friend through a dream ritual, or simply receiving gratitude with an open heart all reinforce our own evolution. This cyclical exchange reminds us that growth is most potent when it flows freely in both directions, dissolving boundaries between teacher and student, self and other. In this communal field, the individual journey intertwines with collective uplift, magnifying the impact beyond what any solitary effort could achieve. Challenges will inevitably arise moments when ego resurfaces, fear attempts to dampen our shine, or rhythms fall out of sync. Yet, these are not failures, but invitations to return to the foundations. Observe without attachment, release tension, realign intention, and recommit to the practices that sustain our resonance. Just as a lighthouse keeper tends the flame and maintains the structure, we must care for our inner light with daily rituals, reflections, and acts of service. The maintenance of embodiment is itself a sacred practice. Ultimately, embodying the light is an act of love for the self cultivated through inner work, and love for the world expressed through outward deeds. It is a recognition that each of us carries a unique frequency, a signature tune in the symphony of existence. When we align with that frequency, we contribute a vital note to the greater melody, creating harmonies that uplift, heal, and inspire. The rare book's final teaching is both simple and profound. The universe does not demand perfection. It invites participation. It asks us to bring our whole selves' flaws and all to the creative dance of life. As you embark on your own chapter of embodiment, remember that every gesturino, no matter how small, ripples outward. A compassionate word, a guided breath, a shared story, or a seated pause can kindle transformation in ways unseen. Let your life be the rare book the universe sends to others when they, too, are ready. Shine steady, shine true, and trust that your light will illuminate pathways you cannot yet imagine.